at Penji is our commitment to helping those who are making sacrifices to help others. Thank you to those making a difference in your community. We are currently accepting applications for Penji for nonprofits. If you know a nonprofit or you are one yourself, head over to penji.co and click on Penji for Good at the bottom of the website to learn how to qualify. If you are listening to this podcast and are not a nonprofit, well, welcome. Become a customer by using the custom coupon code within the podcast show notes. Proceeds of all sales goes directly back to the nonprofit from this interview. Now, back to the show.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unified Purpose, the podcast where we share inspiring tales of compassion, resilience, and community spirit. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's Partnership Coordinator, and I'm joined here today with a very special guest, Shazak Sunada from No More Under. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you. So could you start by introducing yourself maybe differently than I would and tell us all about your journey up to this point and what you're doing now and anything that you think you'd like to share?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Shazak. I live in the Seattle area, though originally I'm from Indiana. And I founded almost 6 years ago an organization called No More Under. And as some organizations come from things that happen in life, this is no different. My son, Yori, drowned in a backyard pool at 3 years old. And kind of just, I don't know, I don't want to say kind of, but it completely changed my life. And I realized how many parents did not know the dangers of swimming and how important water safety was. And then I also didn't realize how much this impacts the Black and brown community. And so through all of my kind of honestly searching about why this happened, I didn't officially do the why me thing, but I'm just like, how? I thought I'd done all the right things. My kids were on swim lessons and, you think you're doing all of the things right until something like this happens. And so that led me to start this organization. And we basically focus on making sure that everyone has access to swim lessons. It's something that until you dive into it, you don't realize the historical significance of people not swimming or having access to swim. And then also just there's a lot going on as a parent or as a guardian. And you have multiple kids at a pool. You have one kid at a pool and you're talking to a parent. And I mean, drowning happens very, very quickly. And it's very, very quiet. It's not what we see in the movies. So we go out and get kids free swim lessons and focus really on Black, brown, under-resourced children and families to make sure that they at least have that ability to self-rescue themselves if ever in water. And we've passed a law, we've kind of in this 5-year journey have been able to make some waves and impact not only here in Washington state, but nationally as well.
That is incredible. And in this, I'm really happy to have learned about this because I think when something doesn't impact you directly, you don't realize that it's something that occurs. And I think that's something that you learned in the worst way possible. But I thought about it and I was like, I know so many people that never learned how to swim and that are adults in my age and would be really scared if they were ever in a position where they were in water and I know that there's people out there that did learn to swim and still it happens to everyone. And so having this education is something that's so wonderful, especially for there's so many people that are low income. Like I live in Philadelphia right now that never learned how to swim because they had no access to a pool. And I think that there's so much of a need for this that I didn't even process. And looking into your organization, it was something that was really wonderful and eye-opening for the whole, it's all encompassing of this is people do come into contact with this issue and don't even process that they have to think about it.
Yeah. Well, it was honestly something even when I was kind of founding the organization, there are so many things that are in the world that people are fighting for. I mean, this podcast is here for that reason, to shine a light. And you have a guest list from beyond and still, but I realized that it is something that we can actually change and make a difference in. We don't need doctors. We don't need, I mean, some funding would be nice, but we don't need a lot. We just need those people that you talked about that don't swim as an adult. We need to make sure that before they become parents, they know what to do. It's like, let's start at the ground level and build that foundation. And then moving forward, we can all have, be water safe adults. So it just seems like one little, and little is, not quite the word, but it is a small change in the way that we think about it that can really save lives. So it is, as you said, it's the number one reason 1 to 4-year-olds die. Number two, like 5 to 12 or so. It's continuous throughout life. And then especially when you get older and you add drinking in the mix, like no one is drown proof. Even the best swimmers are not drown proof.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, I love what you mentioned about the idea that this is something that is maybe more easy to implement than other kind of policy or like education around certain things, because this does not have to take, like an Olympic swimmer doesn't have to teach children how to swim. I like a normal person that is adequate at swimming can teach children to swim. And anyone to swim really at that point. And I think that's a really wonderful opportunity to be able to maybe get volunteers for, or be able to do this, because it's something that's not so out of reach, that it's hard to implement. I'm sure funding, as you mentioned, is an issue for all nonprofits, and I'm sure that that's always difficult, but it's really lovely to know that you can do this very community based as well, and you can organize people that really care about this issue and have experienced maybe trouble in this area or in these scenarios, to be able to help out and be able to train different people to be able to do this.
That's right. Yeah. And, really what we do is we partner with local pools that are already functioning and already have swimming instructors, lifeguards. They're already set. We find out when they have some time available, and then we partner with local community organizations. So organizations that might be on your show that work with the communities that are most in need. And we're like a matchmaker, basically. We say, hey, when do you have some time? And then we say, hey, we have time. Let's get your kids in. And then beyond that, we really encourage and find ways, after these sets of free lessons, we find ways to get kids in a longer term lesson, because a lot of it is not even wanting to get in the water. Like there's fears, there's a lot of barriers for people, including transportation. And so we try and knock down as many barriers as we can. And then once there's that excitement, in particular with children, oh my gosh, this is fun. I learned something. And that day 1 to day 5 difference on someone's face that has learned this new life-saving skill then translates into, I want to do this more. Because at some point, it's not about checking a box, right? Like, it's not, oh, we got this kid in the water. I really would like to see, and the team really wants to see, eventually one day, an Olympic swimmer that says, hey, I took no more unders lessons, or, you want someone to have a life in aquatics and feel safe and know that they have power, around something that prior to that time might have been scary, or, something that stops them from joining their friends or being a part of the swimming community.
Yeah, it is something that's very intimidating, especially if you didn't learn it from a very young age. And learning it from a young age is terrifying. I distinctly remember my first swimming lessons and how terrifying it was, because it's not something that it almost, like, if you're not in going to be around water, it almost makes, like, you can avoid it. You can just say, I don't want to learn how to swim because I'm never going to have to swim. And that is probably the scariest thing to do, because you're not experienced with it at all. But to get children excited about it is like that's probably so fulfilling and lovely to see too.
It really is. It really is. And I think, the other thing we're really trying to figure out is, how we can get this information into schools because I mean, not every school has a pool. I mean, I learned how to swim at the YMCA, but then I remember in high school having to get in these horrible green swimsuits and swim in high school. And I think back in the day that I've heard, many stories along this journey of I couldn't graduate high school, I couldn't graduate college until I knew how to swim. And that just, we have so many other things that we're trying to fit into the school day that this is kind of dropped to the wayside. But it's like, even if we can get 30 minutes before kids leave for summer, or in Florida, even more, where drowning is really prevalent. But just that reminder, wear a life jacket, don't jump in after someone if you see them drowning. Like there's some common sense things that are common sense to me because this is what I do. But the average person, you see someone drowning potentially, and you jump in to try and save them. And there's countless stories of multiple people drowning because someone went in to save. So again, it's foundational. How can we teach this? Just like we teach, hey, you don't move before your seatbelt is buckled, And so it's like, if we can be that fundamental, oh, I don't get on my bike until I put on a helmet. Hey, I'm not going to go in open water out in the sea without at least having a life jacket there and ideally having it on. Those are things that I feel like are really teachable. And you start when they're 2 years old and then it's there. It's programmed in. So
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's something that maybe people probably don't even think about because it's something that I think about it like people naturally and almost always, I don't know anyone that doesn't know how to ride a bike except for me because I didn't learn how to ride a bike.
Oh my gosh.
But I think of how that is like just a natural known thing to teach your children. Like, right. I don't actually really know why either. Because especially for many places that it's not really like, it doesn't make sense to even learn. That's just something that is almost crucial to child development or considered to be for whatever reason. And it's interesting. It was always interesting to me that swimming was not that unless you were in a shore town or like by a lake or whatever it may be, like you were by a body of water. And even then, I think it was almost something that maybe wasn't trained, but like expected of you to figure out, rather than riding a bike, which is like this newfangled technology for a child. So it's something that needs to be taught. Whereas swimming is oddly not focused on in the same way, which I think is so interesting. So I understand the foundational aspect of it because anyone that learned to swim from when they were younger just gets in the water and doesn't even think about it.
That's exactly right. And so you said something key here. It's not necessarily just even people in shore towns. That was something that was passed down to them, right? So it's like, I learned how to swim, so of course my kids are going to learn how to swim, right? But then when you look at some laws and segregation from way back, I don't even want to say way back, but 1950s.
They continue to impact, unfortunately.
Exactly. They continue to impact because, Black and brown people were not allowed to swim in pools. And so there's been a fear of just stay away from the water. And so that fear is passed down generationally. And so it's breaking that cycle and teaching the new generations. And we've even found that sometimes when we do teach kids and they're really excited, their parents struggle to take them swimming because they're scared, right, to get into the water. But there have been like some celebrities for sure that have learned later in life. And, of course, I want to be like, don't you want to Oh, well,
You'd be like,
be a spokesperson, but because I think that that's another thing where, you see people doing this and it is encouraging, for people to take that step because it's scary. If you don't have the proper tools and, ability to learn in a comfortable setting, if anything.
yeah. What kind of strategies do you implement to try to make, I guess, different people trust that this is a safe activity to do?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, the very first step, honestly, is talking to the organization or community leaders, right? Like, I don't want to just go into a neighborhood and say, "Hey, you need to learn how to swim. I can teach you." Like, it's a real process of building relationships and making sure that you kind of express this is why this is important, and if you want this opportunity, and some of it is having community leaders talk to their community, and making sure that because there's already an innate trust there. So that's really step one is just making sure you connect with communities and leaders. Like we've worked with pastors before because people listen to doctors, pastors, they listen to certain people more than just me walking in the door saying, "Hey, don't you want to do this?"
New faces are
And then we
scary.
make sure to really guide them through the process, because I think there's even something we say an informational barrier that, not everyone has a computer that is going to autofill, and sometimes language can be a barrier. So we just try and make that initial process of getting in comfortable. And then there is just language, I feel like, and, before children get in the water and as they are getting into the water, making sure that, the teachers understand even what the fears are. So there was one we tried to figure out, and I kind of feel like we did a little bit. We even gave teachers like kind of a key, like this child has had a drowning incident or has a fear, like, trying to get a sense of what children are stepping in to what the baggage they have around water. So that an instructor knows to have a little more just a little like almost a safety net or something, which there already is one, but just sometimes it's additional language and just making sure I think that the lessons are kind of culturally appropriate, making sure even that people have swim caps if that's because, for sure with Black folks, like I don't want to mess up my hair with the chlorine and then have to do all the work to get it back. So it's kind of taking all of those things into consideration and making the experience of getting to the pool comfortable so that you feel, hey, you've been held this whole way. And now, but I mean, I can think of one experience that I had with a boy, and I don't get in the water personally. There I will be on the side and, cheer everybody on. But I remember this one child and everybody had jumped, that lesson was pretty much over. And he just had so much fear in jumping in. And you just realize what a life-changing kind of activity this can be to overcome. I'm like, if you overcome this fear, like this is setting you up for the future of overcoming many fears. Like if you can really have trust in jumping into this like it's really it's been kind of a shift for me because I have such a bit of a negative, just personally because of my experiences, a negative vibe around the water. But being at these lessons has really just continued to help me heal really and recognize how special, these times are for, again, families that wouldn't normally have access to the space.
Yeah, no, it's incredible to have such a, a objectively horrible experience and be able to use it to be able to save others. I think that that's so wonderful, and it must be so scary for you to be in these circumstances, like actively putting yourself in these circumstances after that. Um and feeling maybe the responsibility of for these children that are in these places at that time. Like that must be so terrifying. And I just want to, I guess, acknowledge that that's so unbelievably wonderful. And even if you don't want to go in the water, that's still something that, like, the fact that you're doing this at all is really, really incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, I am. I mean, I have 3 other boys, so I do in fact have to get in the water in summertime, like when the water goes swimming, which is not necessarily my favorite, but in particular for these lessons, I did actually, this past year kind of draw a boundary because it is just like emotionally challenging often
Yeah.
to be at lessons. And so I'm not a regular. But also as we move into like kind of the end of last year and this year, we're moving to a more national model. So we also want to, thank you, step back and make sure that lessons can happen without one of us physically having to be there as well. So that was kind of a good test to see how we call it Swim Safely series and how the Swim Safely series can run nationally without us being so hands-on.
How are you able to kind of grow this while also having that accountability of like maybe instructors or different people that are able to educate on the level that you would like?
Sure. So I have a background in production. So filmmaking and television, that was kind of a past life, but still current. And our program director has a past life in collegiate swimming. And so also instructing. So we kind of joined forces in creating I feel like it's 5 hours, but we have a pretty intense training on video that we're basically partnering with colleges and collegiate swimmers. And so through this training, we get the collegiate swimmers trained up and have a follow-up Zoom and just make sure and even have like little snippets before their first lesson. And it's one instructor to 2 children. And so they really go in armed with the knowledge, like what's being said. They go in understanding, the goal really is survival, So we just want to make sure you might not, if you're starting 100% from scratch, you might not know how to do the breaststroke by the end of the 5 days, but you are going to know how to get yourself to the edge of something and or be able to figure out how to survive and float. So basically, with that training, they are armed with all they need. And then as far as safety goes, I mean, we have some lead instructors and we have lifeguards, and our coaches are working with us as well to make sure that all eyes, because that's obviously terrifying, just wanting to make sure that everyone is safe. And, there are a lot of lessons that are 8 to 1 instructor, 10 to 1 instructor, but because these students are, newly trained, we want to make sure we start them with 2. But it is, even beyond the excitement of going to your local college, there is something really cool about kind of being mentored by a collegiate swimmer. It helps you see what's possible.
Yeah.
And those kids, the collegiate swimmers are passionate about swimming, and they have so much energy and excitement around wanting to give back to the community, which I was, I don't remember. I guess in college I was a little bit like that, but I didn't know that they would be so excited to give back. But it's been really beautiful to watch this slowly grow.
That's wonderful. I do really love also, well, one, it's great to have that inspiration to like what to strive for, which is really cool because I think that when maybe a scared parent is teaching their child how to swim, it's kind of, you don't know what to really look for because they're also being cautious. Whereas if you have someone that's so passionate about swimming, teaching you about swimming, it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's on the parent at all. I think that's just like the dynamic of how like that can be inspirational. And it's also interesting to learn the instructor student ratio, because I think that definitely, and I'm sure having developed this, you must know that that must put a lot of minds at ease, especially parents,
Mhm.
of the idea that that is how it's working rather than like one overloaded instructor with many children, which is honestly how I was raised to swim,
And
which looking back is kind of terrifying. Because there you cannot watch that many children at one time. That's
right.
it's
Well,
like
and
definitely.
I would say a lot of pools, the teachers, especially if you're at a YMCA or an organization, they have their lifeguards. I would say this is, one of our things. It's called water watching. And it's like, as a parent, you should always be watching your child. I do know some lessons like maybe don't allow parents to watch or something. I don't know if I personally would be comfortable with those lessons, but I just think this is another reason why, hey, you're there supporting your kid, watching them through their lessons. But I just wouldn't want to discourage someone from not getting some lessons because it's a 6-to-1 ratio of teacher. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on the age of the child. There's so many variables, right? There's so many variables. But yeah, same at the YMCA. I feel like there were 8 kids in my class, and you were a minnow or a guppy, or you got your patches as you went on. But what feels really special about this is we understand the delicacy of these communities getting into the pool, and just want to make sure that they have as individual of an experience as
Yeah.
possible. And it is also really, we are just working on this Instagram post where we see these kids like hanging out, like the bonding that happens also amongst the children that are in the class are helpful. So it's nice to have a swimming buddy.
Yeah, it's especially nice to kind of advocate individually for each child as well, because they might have different fears around swimming, like, or maybe a couple of them don't have any fears at all, but they still need to learn. And I think that being able to talk to them about that and like, like work with them in different ways is definitely really helpful for their experience and them wanting to continue to do it. Whereas, their needs aren't necessarily always addressed when there's one person working with many children. And again, like I don't blame the YMCA's of the world for providing swimming lessons for either a low cost or no cost, as
Yeah.
I had this similar experience as well. And but unfortunately the reality of that is that that's why a lot of parents don't trust even putting their kids in that scenario, because they're scared of that
Yeah.
situation. And
That's right.
so it's wonderful to account for that.
Yeah. Thank you. There's, yeah, we definitely, there's always things I'm sure, you don't think of, but we've run the program a few times now and have adjusted. And I think that's what I appreciate about the team is we're not like, oh my gosh, it has to be like this. It's like, you know what works good for the instructors? How do we make sure that they feel, informed? And then also the parent side of things. So we've done enough lessons, I think, at this point that we're, feel good about the program and feel really confident, but also feel flexible enough that as improvements need to happen, we make them. But for sure, for me, I'm hyper. I'm hypersensitive about the safety around it. And so it's kind of cool when people come into a space and bring their own expertise and their own care. And that's what really gets you that full picture of what something should be. So me coming in, wanting to make sure that nothing like this happens to anyone else and anyone else's family is a benefit, as we put in safety measures.
Yeah, it's good to account for and adjust for different things that you realize don't work in the process. I think that's something that even businesses have to do commonly,
Yeah.
and an organization works similarly, obviously. And So I think that is it's good to not be just
Legit,
yes,
right?
about it. It's because it's not it's especially since you're doing a service, it's something that you can't afford to be rigid for because everyone's different. So if someone's responding poorly to the service, then it makes no sense to keep
Exactly.
it the way it is, especially when you
Exactly.
need all this different help from different places. So of course you need to work around all of the different needs of everyone, not just to, the population that you're helping, but the people that are involved in helping that population.
That's right. No, that's right.
What was a difficulty that you think you had during this process? Like maybe one of the biggest ones that you struggled with, but kind of like adjusted for?
Um, let's see. I mean, we don't have enough pools. Um,
Yeah.
so that's just we adjusted by granted, the YMCA is a huge partner of ours, as is the city of Seattle and city of Bellevue. We work with city pools for sure. But we've also started working with swim clubs or private, organizations that have a pool that are willing to be open. We've even held swimming lessons in an apartment complex where a pool was not getting used because the families that were there um, are comfortable swimming. So we went to them in their
That's
pool
awesome.
space. So I think that's just like a big picture, like, oh my gosh, we need more pool spaces. And then I think the other thing is it's definitely can be challenging when you offer a service for free of making sure people show up, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm going to sign up and then maybe. So we've offered incentives to make sure, hey, if you come to all 5 of the days, you can get this. And, we're constantly kind of working on ways to just make sure that it makes sense. Transportation vouchers, that might be something that, I mean, gas is expensive. Everything is expensive right
Yeah.
now, but just making sure, that as much as possible can be with ease. But yeah, those two things are the first things that kind of popped up. And I think the last thing that, I appreciate you mentioning at the beginning, it's getting people to recognize how important this is, and how, again, easy is a strong word, but how a few steps, it's like if we lean into this heavy right now, 5 years from now, not even 5 years from now, we would be a safer nation. So I think getting people to really hear. We work with the CDC quite a bit, and it's so interesting because there's a lot of preventable injuries from suicide to guns to even elderly falls. And um, drowning is kind of even low on it's there. So I'm glad we're in the room. But the budgets in comparison, because it's uh it's all just very challenging to be like, yes, we're here and yes, we can, make
Yeah.
make a difference. So
It must be difficult because I know that, and I see this very often in funding models for different cities, is the idea that if something statistically on paper looks like it's less impactful, then less money goes to it. Um, and it's the most unfortunate thing because statistics doesn't say all. And it's like even if drowning is like maybe this like 2% of
yeah,
leading to these deaths, that's still if you think about the amount of people that's still a ton of people. It's just in comparison to these other deaths,
yes,
maybe not, and that's probably such a struggle because it's similarly to any resources put into populations. If the demographic is lower, then we provide less funding for it, and it's not how it should work.
that's right. And the tricky thing with drownings in particular is, okay, we all have a list of the people who died from drowning, right? That's reported. It's on the death certificate often that there was a drowning involved.
Mhm.
What we don't always account for is all of the other drownings that happen, but someone survives. So you
Mhm.
have this population, and for children, I'm really good with the kids statistics, not as much with the adults, but for every one child that drowns, there are 8 that are taken to the emergency room and that need support and help. And then I don't even know if we have really quite the statistic, but there's a lot of children out there that, have significant struggle post drowning. And so you have those, and then you have the other, however much percentage of people that they went under and someone saved them, but it wasn't bad enough that they needed to go to the emergency room.
Mhm.
But drownings happen so regularly, and it's really challenging. Like, one of the even legislative kind of momentums is to try and get better reporting, of when first responders go out. Like, tell us what was happening and tell us, all the circumstances, because all of that information leads to us being able to create a safer space and be able to educate, people on how to be water safe. So, again, yes, it is definitely way less than suicide, and I'm not attempting to necessarily compare, but the deal is that they're all preventable. And
Yes.
so, I feel like in particular with water safety, the life jacket usage, the, "Hey, you're just around water, don't forget to watch your kids, don't forget to watch your friends," again, so it's, it is a struggle, but when you look at the numbers of how much it costs the taxpayers, it's I'm billions of dollars nationwide of the ambulance, the hospital, all of that in comparison to what we could put in right now to make sure that kids get that hour's worth of education every year, and learn CPR, and we would save a lot of lives.
Yeah, that is another thing. Okay, I know we're over time, but I have one more
Oh,
curiosity.
okay, no worries. I didn't even know what the time
No, no, no,
was.
no.
So,
I can see it on the top, but no, it's okay. I have a curiosity question before we go because
sure.
because you mentioned CPR. Um, do you incorporate that in your lessons? Is that something that you're trying to put in schools as well?
Oh, so in schools, yes. So as far as lessons go, I definitely have this dream of being able to teach parents CPR while their children are going through lessons. Like, it's just like, hey, you're here, so learn this life-saving skill.
Yeah.
But for sure, when we look at what we would do in an educational setting, it's stepped, right? So in kindergarten, it's learning to put your life jacket on, and then by the time you're in, I don't know, 6th grade, you're starting to get a sense of what maybe CPR looks like, and being able to make sure you know how to swim. And by high school, CPR, what a life, all the basics. Because, oh my gosh, if everybody graduating from high school knew CPR, even if we did have a drowning, often someone would be able to, rescue, right? And so that would have saved my son, if we would have done proper CPR. And I forget the number around it, but there's some number that if you can, every time you do CPR, for the minutes you do CPR, it's like life saving, and so yeah, I think of the water watching, the life jacket, and CPR, because those are the 3 things that, would maybe be the reason you are still here.
Yeah, I think that's so wonderful because there's so many levels to this process that I think could be incorporated and could be life-saving. And it's wonderful that you're thinking about all of them. Because it is a privilege to learn these things, unfortunately, and it shouldn't be because it is life-saving like behavior. I know that I am lucky enough to have learned CPR in high school, and
Mhm.
it was jarring to find out that that was not a regular thing because why would it was like a natural thought to me that why would you not be taught this? This makes sense for everyone to learn. It's
Right.
so incredibly useful. It's more useful than calculus. I would rather, I would much rather learn this.
I say that all the time because there's this new game that's like replaced dodgeball and it's called Gaga Ball. And I feel like one day the whoever developed Gaga Ball will come for me. But I'm just like, would you rather learn Gaga Ball or learn the life-saving skill of swimming? You know? I don't know. It's lovely and my kids love it.
Volleyball is fun. I did that in camp.
There you go. It's super fun. But I'm also like, is it going to save your life?
Yeah.
You know, that's my question.
Maybe if you're trapped in a ring with like an animal that's chasing you, I mean like that. But that's like way less likely to happen than you encountering a body of water.
Exactly. Exactly. So priorities, right? That's really what we're looking at and attempting to just make sure that water safety is a priority for not only parents, but for our nation.
Wow. Well, I think that is a perfectly succinct note to end on because it encompasses everything that you said. And I really appreciate you sharing all of this with me. One, because your story is so inspirational for I think that so many people wouldn't be able to do something from something so traumatic happening. And I don't blame them for not, but I do think that it's so unbelievably wonderful that you're doing this. And this is something that I think people should think more about. I didn't think of it before knowing about it. And I'm so happy that it's something that I'm aware of because it truly is something that's so important.
Thanks, Shannon. I appreciate you and I appreciate this platform to share. So seriously, sincerely, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching or listening. We would be nothing without you. And I hope that you figure out a way to volunteer or learn more about this organization so that you're able to help as well, or at least be able to spread the word about how important this is. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
You've been listening to Unified Purpose, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.